All right, got the recording started. Mitch, are you available to host, or should I host for the time that I can?
Yeah, I can share the doc out.
Okay, thanks. We're not seeing your screen if you're trying to share, Mitch.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. There you go. Now you got it.
All right. So we have a friendly reminder on the still in review documents. There's quite a few that are waiting for feedback and or approval. Costin, are you still working on all three of those in progress docs, or can any of those be?
No, you can remove them. Probably not relevant.
Okay. Sounds good. And a friendly reminder that if you own any of these docs, just make sure that they are still intended to be in review, etc. Oops, that's not great. All right, I'll fix that. Oh, anyway, I'll clean that up in a little bit. All right. So top of the agenda is Lior, who said he wasn't gonna be here today. He just wanted to make sure to mention that the RFC for gateway inference routes is available for your review. He's going to present it next week, but you can get some early feedback in by reading it now. Beyond that, I will hand it off to Stephen.
Hey, folks. So I'm trying to get the docs in a better place with respect to what's supported in ambient, what's supported, what's not supported. Such when it's supported. I think auth policy, I think, is a good example because the L4 stuff works with just Z-tunnel, if I'm correct, but you need to deploy a waypoint if you want to get any of the L7 policy to apply. And I just wanted to get your thoughts, people's thoughts. My first kind of idea was to just add like in ambient you have to do this, in ambient you have to do that. My only worry is that when you add stuff like that of like you have to do this or that, it kind of feels like you're walking through a minefield because it feels like you have to get all these things right for things to work. And I just wanted to see if people had thoughts beyond just adding like little tips of like in ambient do this, in ambient do that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, looking at our enhancements repo the other day. Maybe we need some more fields in the feature table. We have sort of distinguished the ambient features from sidecar features, but maybe we need some more information how the mapping works, how to do things in ambient.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. I think somebody mentioned in the Slack though, says something along the lines of like something like gateway, like virtual services are an alpha in ambient, but gateway API doesn't support every feature. So there's also that of like what is available in what stage and when. And again, the point is there does anybody have any thoughts on just putting like tips of like in ambient do this or in ambient do that? Going once. We can always talk more in that. Yeah, Mitch.
One of the things that we struggle with here is that it's not just a matter of like which CRDs are supported, but even which fields and which values of which CRDs are supported.
Yeah.
that's more of a problem than a solution, but we do have all of our fields documented in the reference architecture or in the reference section of docs.
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering if maybe that is the right place to give a field by field.
Uh,
I don't know.
yeah. I didn't think of that. That's good.
And don't forget that fields are not everything. I mean, the missing field has a different behavior, and a field with a particular value behaves differently, even if it means about the same thing.
Do you have an example off the top of your head, Costin?
Pretty much everything related with HTTP that and the more complex policies, because they are applied in different points in waypoint versus sidecar.
I see. Yes.
So metrics are slightly different. Anything that you can apply or you cannot apply is slightly different because it's not to mention destination rule and how load balancing behaves, and well, it's large.
Keith?
Yeah, sorry, I had to step away, so I wasn't able to respond before. I like Mitch's idea. I wonder if something like an asterisk next to certain fields or certain resources, and the asterisk just says requires waypoint for ambient. I wonder something like that, or like a key of some sort, because it would get a bit overbearing to see like for ambient this, for ambient that, like every single field. So I'm wondering if we could come up with some sort of legend or shorthand to allow expressing the same thing. But yeah, expressing the same thing, but not being so like repetitive and overbearing with like having a sentence each time. But I do think we need to definitely to make this clearer. And I also like Daniel's suggestion of like having like a one-page view of what's supported, what's not supported for ambient, or if they're like a caveat. I think we need both. Because the reference section is the de facto go-to for the field, for the front field level things.
Costin?
My ideal scenario would be if we had a site or some section of the site or something that has only the things that are in common, that are safe to use in both environments, that work the same way in both behavior. Like the HTTP route and gateway are covered by the compatibility test suites that upstream Kubernetes have and are pretty much guaranteed to work exactly the same no matter what you're using. There are some other things in Istio that work. We know that work the same and are stable. We have tested. We are confident that if you use them, you don't have any problem. For a user, especially for a new user or for someone who wants to be extra safe and want to migrate eventually to ambient, that's probably the most valuable, because if they stick with this particular subset and with this documentation, they will be independent of the implementation. I mean, if you use sidecars or not, you will still have the exact same behavior and you can migrate it. I think that will be far more useful than going over the 10,000 features that we have and putting asterisks and kind of... Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah, well, I was thinking I wouldn't go through every single field. That seems like a lot, but I would just go through like the most common ones.
If you don't, it's bad, because users will believe we don't know what it is, and we have a lot more fields that are not common than the fields that are common.
That's fair.
Do we feel like the set of resources that behave similarly is pretty accurately defined by what we've listed as like GA for ambient versus being like alpha? Like if we started there, is that a pretty good jumping off point?
Not service entry.
A lot of, besides the gateway APIs, I don't think there is much that is as clear as we hope.
Yeah, service entry is the good counterexample there. Yeah.
Hey, what's wrong with service entry? That's in 5 seconds.
Wildcards are supported in sidecars. Wildcards aren't supported in ambient.
Okay.
Yet, at least.
Well, wildcards are supported in sidecar asterisks.
That is fair.
But they can be. It's It's complicated.
Okay. That's good feedback. I'll think about Cossin or like going through the major enhancements or features page and maybe start using that as a starting point. And if nobody has any other comments, I think we can move on.
If I can put another small comment, don't
Yep.
forget that a lot of features also depend. You enable DNS interception or don't enable DNS interception. You do you enable, you know. So there are other subtleties depending on the settings on Istio that affect even within sidecar the behavior.
Okay. Yeah. So there's DNS. There's your sidecar ambient. There's whether you've deployed waypoint. Lots of asterisks everywhere. Okay, we can move on to me again. So if nobody has anything else. Okay, so in Kubernetes, for traffic distribution, they created or GA'd a new field option called preferred close. And that was kind of ambiguous, but the way we interpreted preferred close was give high priority to endpoints in the same subzone, and then priority 1 to same zone, priority 2 to same region, and then it was like something. In 1.33, they added 2 new ones, or 1 new one. The first one was prefer node, or prefer same node, and I think a natural way to implement that would be to give highest priority to endpoints in the same node, and then subzone, zone, region, and so on and so forth. And then they added prefer same zone, which is an alias of prefer close. They're very explicitly an alias of each other. So the question is, should prefer same zone give highest priority to endpoints in the same subzone, like we do right now with prefer close, or do something that is closer to what its name suggests, which is give highest priority to endpoints in the same zone without regard to the subzone? I was wondering if people that had more insight into the history of subzone had any thoughts or suggestions.
If Kubernetes is explicitly saying that this is an alias, then we should be careful about having the semantics of the two values of the alias diverge. I would rather prefer close to make it do, if we think that that's semantically incorrect, which I'm not sure it is, I would rather see us update that than just have two aliases have different behaviors.
I somewhat disagree with that line in the cap about it being an alias.
Well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Cosmo.
Sorry, my suggestion is that keep in mind that those things are not specific to Istio, and any vendor that has subzones probably implements in their Kubernetes offering some load balancing that is independent of Istio through CNI or whatever. It would be ideal if the semantics of Istio would match the semantics of non-Istio, because users may migrate from non-Istio to Istio, or they may do whatever they want, and it would be very bad if our interpretation and our behavior is different than the native implementation and behavior. Too many asterisks, too many risks, too many problems. And for the same node, I believe we already support it because we service had this for many years, and we added support, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. So that should not change in behavior. If it's in different behavior API.
Wait, are you saying that we should not change the current behavior? Or
No. For same node is supported in Istio already.
Oh yeah. That doesn't change.
Yeah.
I'm saying, should we keep the current behavior of preferred close, of preferring the same subzone or taking into account subzone, or do what the name suggests more and only take into account the zone and then region and network and so on?
My suggestion was on each vendor, try how it works on that vendor without Istio, and make sure we add whatever settings are necessary in Istio to make it identical. I don't think Google supports subzones, only zones and regions. Maybe I'm wrong, but if a native implementation, CNI or whatever they're using is behaving in one way, we need to match what they're doing.
Well, what if
There's probably
CNI?
not a lot of prior art here for what it's worth. Like this, the introduction of prefer same zone and prefer same node happened in Kubernetes 133. This cap was only like 2 months old.
Yeah, just match what they're doing. That's
Keith?
Yeah, I think hearing this explained out in this setting makes me feel like that this is a breaking change from Kubernetes. Not super impactful, but they are, if I understand correctly, Prefer Close has been GA for traffic distribution, and now they're now changing the semantic meaning of Prefer Close to be an alias. They're basically taking some a lack of taking vagueness in the Prefer Close spec and now making it more specific. And that is a breaking change because that allowed us in Istio to be able to be more targeted and use subzone. But we now no longer can because now they've basically taken that vagueness and that freedom as an implementer, as implementation, and now made it specific. That's a breaking change, I think. By
we
definition.
should raise this on the cap. I think prefer, like what happened in Case 133 is Prefer Close moved from beta to GA, and Prefer Same Zone and Prefer Same Node were introduced as either alpha or beta features.
Alpha.
Yeah, alpha. Okay, yes. So we should. I think that we probably should raise specifically that alias, that single line about it being an alias for Prefer Same Zone, and object to that on the cap.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, I'll do that and see what they have to say.
And then to be clear, to Cotton's point, I want to be very clear. This is not throwing stones, but I think I understand. Like, I think it's good to try to remove ambiguity in a specification, but doing so after that that specification has gone GA does break people who use that vagueness to be able to target their users more appropriately. So it's not throwing stones per se, and I understand why Kubernetes wants to do this, but I don't think it's backwards compatible, and it does break, and that's sort of just.
Kate, I don't disagree with you. No, it is back. Let's be honest, it is backward incompatible, and they are breaking some rules, but that's fine.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Jacek, are you with us?
Okay, so as you can see, I would like to talk about post-quantum safe mode for Istio. Yeah, short introduction. We observe growing demand for post-quantum safe cryptography for mesh traffic. This is already possible for gateways. You can set that using TLS defaults, but we would like to address this entirely, addressing sidecars, waypoints, Z2Nil, to make that to enable that mesh wide. Yeah, and we would like to talk how we could do that in Istio. We wonder what's the right place to enable that. Should it be compliance policy, or should we implement missing settings in mesh MTLS, and so on and so forth? Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, so I've got to leave in like 2 minutes, so I wanted to get my thoughts out here. So I've run into this question, not for post-quantum, but in the scope of FIPS 140-3. Istio's historically, where the compliance policy came from was that it was a pass-through to Boring SSL, to some Boring SSL APIs for Envoy, and we leveraged those to sort of give you FIPS 140-2 compliance. However, Boring SSL has changed its well, actually, let me take that back. No, 142 does not leverage Boring SSL. It's sort of Istio's understanding of what compliance is, and it configures Envoy in certain ways. The In the recent versions of Envoy, after some of the FedRAMP upgrade streams, policy changes, Envoy has moved to using the SSL API for providing compliance, and it's got like a date timestamp in the name. I forget what the exact numbers, but it's like 2022-05 something. And so there's for us in Istio, that sort of creates a break. We've got one compliance policy, we sort of do it ourselves, and it's PIP 148-2. But if we want to leverage Envoy's XDS values, we use compliance policy 2022, something like that. To make matters more complicated, that Envoy policy for Boring SSL does not, that compliance policy does not guarantee PIP 140-3. There's no explicit coupling between the two. It should qualify for PIP 140-3, but it's not explicit. And so now Yasek's coming, you're coming here sort of bringing up the issue of post-quantum and some specific curves. My take on this is that we probably need to start supporting compliance policy sort of first class in Istio and not rely on sort of downstream Envoy as the user-facing API. So we need to have, I think we've got a PIP 140-2 compliance policy. I think we need a PIP 140-3 compliance policy. Then I think we need a post-quantum compliance policy. And those are things that Istio sort of maintains and updates over time as new qualifications come out. So this is all a long way of saying I like this direction. I think we see some, there's some pain points in the FIP space that made me think this is the way we need to go, but we need to make sure we have enough maintainers and basically the staffing in open source to make sure that these stay updated and that we have the proper guidance that we're taking into account. So that's my little spiel. I've got to run, but really excited about this. Thank you for tackling it.
Okay, awesome. I think it's worth to note that there's no FIP standard for hybrid post-quantum key exchange. There is FIP standard for pure post-quantum, which is MLCAM, not the hybrid one. So we couldn't use FIPS 203 for this case. So we would have to introduce some new custom Istio-specific compliance policy. I don't know if this is good direction. Can you share your opinions? Or what do you think about implementing mesh MTLS settings, which includes settings for elliptic curves, but it's not applicable to ambient workloads? An opinion?
I guess we could go into why we don't support setting TLS config on mesh traffic, because I couldn't find any context on that decision.
Okay, so short introduction. There is setting mesh MTLS, which includes elliptic curves in the API, but it's not supported. I think it allows to set cipher suites or min or max TLS version. I don't remember exactly which of these, but not all of them. And it's also not applicable to waypoints. So was that done by design, or it's just a missing feature? Does anybody know? Okay.
Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of continuity over the last 2 years in our security maintainers and leads. So there's probably some context that's been lost here.
So waypoint would just be like one side of the connection. The other side in basically all cases was going to be a Z tunnel. And I think post-quantum in Rust is like pretty experimental at the moment. So that may be a reason why waypoint is not supporting there. It's only half of a connection.
Ah, okay. Okay, I understand. Okay, so does anyone else have a question?
Well, I see
Okay.
you've got a POC for the Z tunnel there. Were you able to find like post-quantum support in Rust that is robust?
Yeah, robust. Good question. I don't know if it is robust. It's I found that it's supported in AWS LCRS for a while, half a year or so. Yeah, it's not yet implemented in all providers. Currently, only AWS LCRS supports it. The Ring provider doesn't support it, and OpenSSL also doesn't support it yet. But there is a library which allows to load OQS provider, which extends OpenSSL with post-quantum algorithms for key exchange. And I also drafted a POC. Yeah, go ahead, Cosmin.
My general thinking about any encryption algorithm is, does Chrome, Firefox, and the main browser support it? Do the main load balancers, managed load balancers support it, like Google and Amazon and so forth? And if both are true and curl supports it and the other things, then it's probably okay to use it. But if it's just between zTunnel and Envoy, it may not be worth the effort.
Why do you think so?
Because at the end of the day, users, start the conversation with a browser, and they use application like Java and whatever to connect to load balancers, and then it goes through zTunnel, but at the end of the day, the customer is still starting with usually outside of the Istio perimeter. And that's where probably the most attacks will happen, and the most interception is most vulnerable. So if someone is breaking the existing non-post-quantum algorithms, they will probably not have to bother to break the internal links that is already harder to attack.
Okay.
I mean, there is value. I'm not saying there's not value, but we should be driven by what the industry is doing, and that's usually between browsers and the mainstream load balancers.
Yes, I totally understand your point, but we receive requests for this feature as some users, our customers, are concerned that in case of sniffing internal traffic being breaked, it will be decrypted later, and we just receive expectation that everything is encrypted and safe against post-quantum capabilities. So we try to answer these.
We've definitely heard similar, requirements or expectations from users on our side. I think really, I see two horizons here. There's feasibility, just in terms of what is the support policy on this library that you're using in Rust, where, are we going to be able to get previews of embargoed CVEs, etc., making sure that we're up to speed. And then on the API side, what does it look like for the customers to enable this? How much control do we give them? But I think it's a good idea. There's just a lot of questions that need to get answered along the way.
Okay.
Yeah, another option, I think Cloudflare has been making some noise about post quantum cryptography. So we could see if there's anything in like Pangolin that's their Rust-based proxy. That might give us a clue as to what other big users are doing, big Rust users. Yeah, I hadn't seen your compliance policy for zTunnel yet, so I'll take a look at that.
Okay, thanks for feedback.
Is that in a PR, like even just a POC PR, or is it just?
No, it's I didn't submit an PR. I just wanted to discuss the idea before submitting an. I didn't want to submit PRs without context.
That's fair.
Why we want to do that, and I also wanted to discuss where we could do that. Should it be compliance policy or other settings, you know. Okay, thank you for this feedback. I think we'll discuss it internally, and maybe we'll come back with further steps.
There's another dimension to granularity here too, that is, it's not just whether we're talking about individual workloads or the whole mesh or things along those lines, but the granularity in terms of how much control we give over algorithm selection. Is this just a blanket, give me PQC? Or is this I want particularly this elliptic curve to be used, similar to the questions that we've had with FIPS before as we've done it? Are we, we had set a minimum TLS version, but then with FIPS 140-2, that gave some problems because TLS 1.3 is still not certified by 140-2. So we should spend some time thinking about how abstract or concrete we want those settings to be. Again, I'm throwing this up as something we want to think carefully about, but I absolutely think we should do this.
Okay, I like this question because I don't know how we should name it, and if we would implement ECDH curves in mesh MTLS configuration, then we would need to configure all components separately. It would be mesh MTLS would apply to sidecars and maybe to waypoints. ZTunnel would need another setting. XDS components, pilot discovery and pilot agent would need additional settings, and ECD and ZTunnel as well. So that might cause failures if someone forgot to set all these fields. That's why I started thinking about something global like compliance policy, and then I didn't know how to abstract from the algorithm to not require from users knowing all these details about algorithms and exposing something like post-quantum safe mode or post-quantum key exchange, whatever, something that's just post-quantum safe, and not to expose these details. Daniel, I think you wanted to say something, right?
I just took another look at your changes that you made to ZTunnel, and I mean, they're using AWS's libcrypto. So I think from a dependency standpoint, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, that's true. I also think so, because this is the default crypto provider for ZTunnel, and it already supports the hybrid post-quantum algorithm. It's a pretty new thing, but anyway, it's in the default provider right now. So it doesn't seem like something complicated to introduce. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no more questions.
My only concern is what I wrote in the chat is that I'm also sort of gravitating towards the compliance policy because it makes things simpler, and we can just apply it globally without the user having to go in and changing 10 settings. But my worry is that we're pretty much on our own because it's not like FIPS 142 where there's a specific set of cipher suites. There's a defined TLS version that must be used. Like, we would just be doing this on our own and sort of picking cipher suites and saying that we consider them post-quantum safe, which, I mean, we're obviously backing that up with the research in the area, but it's not our area of expertise. So that's my only worry, is that we're creating this bucket that we then have to maintain as long as there's no third-party entity defining this bucket of cipher suites and TLS settings that we could reuse.
Yeah, that's true. And also using some abstract name for this feature, like post-quantum, would give more flexibility in modifying used algorithms and TLS versions, and you know.
I think I saw that Jackie was here. Jackie, you lead our product security working group. Do you know if we are on the LC pre-notification list for this AWS library?
I don't, but I can look into that for sure.
Okay, sounds like if we're already using it, we ought to make sure that we've got that base covered. And as long as it is, then this, well, one way or the other, if we're already using it, we've got to get it covered. So I think that makes sense.
Cool. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Okay, I have no more questions for now. I think we can go to the next topic.
Awesome.
Thanks for.
Let's see. It looks like Jackie, you've got a few things up next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring up service scope config. I know I brought it up in the last several working group meetings, so sorry if you're getting tired of it. But I think we're getting closer to consensus on what that API should look like. I think the main feedback that we got in the TOC meeting on Monday was that we need to clearly distinguish this API from other APIs that are available for exposing services at the East-West Gateway in multi-cluster configurations, and namely that's service settings and the mesh config, service export, hosts, kind of et cetera. So we've done that by moving this API outside of service settings. So it's its own message now. Secondly, we needed to clarify, and be consistent with our terminology, especially with the use of discoverability, visibility, load balancing, routability, and such. So I've tried in the docs to be more clear, but if folks could take a look, that would be great. Because again, we all have our own definitions for those terms. So I just like to make sure I'm using the most correct terms I can. And then I also clarified that this API isn't intended to enforce security policies. We have other resources to do that. So I've tried to, from the mesh admin perspective, clarify how this API is intended to be used. So I think those are the main clarifications I've made. And again, just to clarify, we're not reading other clusters' mesh configs. We're only reading our own, but we are requiring consistency across the mesh configs. So if folks could take a look, it's really just nailing down the docs here, and that could be iterative, but I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page about the intention of this API.
Yeah, since I commented the most, thank you for moving it to a separate proto. That was one concern.
Yes.
Making it clear that it's only using the local mesh config satisfies the other problems that was expressed.
Yep.
I'm trying to understand what the API is doing. So the local mesh config and I declare service scope external, does it impact load balancing or does it impact gateway export? So, and for the part where it impacts the export, how does it interact with service export, for example, or the other controls about gateway?
So my understanding is that it's both. It determines what endpoints are shared to the zTunnel array point, and then it's also configuring gateway exposure. And then in terms of priority for service export versus whatever scope configuration is in the mesh config, I'm not sure what Keith intended there, but it might make some sense for service export to have priority. But again, I'm not sure.
So a user could still use service export
Yes.
to export a server to the side, or gateway export.
Yes.
To control the export, and then destination rule. What is the relation with destination rule? If user is using destination rule to specify, do we still plan to have the first class destination rule per namespace and so forth be supported? Because right now it's only the mesh owner can make those changes.
Yes, it's not intending to conflict with any other, or it's not intending to replace any other resources. Those I think will still have.
No, but destination will still take priority as a V1 API.
Yes.
Okay.
That was my understanding. I guess Keith isn't here to correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe Mitch, you also understand. But I believe that is the case. It is not. Destination role and service export are still meant to take priority.
Then I think we are okay. I mean, again, I'm still not comfortable with the first APIs that is controlling both producer and client, because we had all the APIs where we try to do that turned out to have problems and confuse users. But and it's not really the common practice in Kubernetes and in Gateway or everywhere else. But that's fine. I mean, we'll see how many people use it and what is the feedback before we promote it to something else.
Yeah, exactly. If this isn't the right path forward, we'll figure that out, and we'll take a different approach.
We do need to start considering what parts of destination rule will be able to work in terms of governing client-side behavior.
All of it. I mean, destination rule and locality load balancing and the other stuff, it's kind of an established and V1 API. We cannot really change it or change semantics.
The problem is that the architecture does not provide for HTTP proxying on the client side. So all of the like outlier detection for 503s, etc., is not viable unless we're going to add HTTP to the Z-tunnel.
We are talking only about particular. We are talking about the load balancing. I mean, locality. I mean, same cluster, same region, same zone, same whatever. Like we discussed at the beginning of the meeting, and that's part of destination rule, pretty solid. So,
okay, we should probably just make sure we're really clear on that, because there are a decent number of L7 features interweaved with those fields. It's not a really clean divide.
Asterisks on all over the place. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yep, agreed. There's a lot more to be done, but I just wanted to nail down the basic of.
And for the host names, what was the decision? Because again, the problem was that we don't control the labeling on kube system and not kube couple of. I mean, that the only reason we have the original API, the one that we have, is because kube system was special, and there was few other namespaces which were special because, you know, they were system application and installed by the vendors, and they don't provide any way to control labels, to modify labels.
Sure. I think I added documentation for how the service scope config and the hosts will interact. Precedence will go to if there's any locality setting, like if it's if local is the scope, that will take precedence over global.
Okay.
But we will still consider both.
Okay, so if I have a existing mesh config where I specify kube system or full system is local, that will keep working.
Yes.
Okay, then I'm happy. And sorry for all the back and forth and the 100 messages but it's you know, a complicated subject.
No, it's okay. Now we really make sure. Now we really understand it. So it's okay. It's complicated. Okay, so that was all I had there, unless folks have any other comments. I just had one other quick kind of agenda item or shout out. Okay, so this was a issue brought up by a community member. They discovered that on restart in ambient, if the Istio, like if the CNI daemon set isn't ready or available or up yet, the primary CNI could overwrite the plugin that we've added for Istio CNI, and therefore when like the CNI is invoked and you're going through the plugins, we won't go through, you won't process the Istio CNI, you won't run that binary. So none of the IP table rules that are applied by that binary will be applied. So there's not going to be redirection. So essentially you'll be bypassing the mesh potentially on node restart, just due to the ordering of which the like Istio CNI daemon set comes up. And we can't necessarily control this. This isn't a issue in sidecar mode because we have a init container. We're waiting for it to be ready, but we don't have that. We don't have that same init container in ambient mode, I guess, by design. But therefore, we can't implement the same waiting on the Istio CNI daemon to be ready. So we've been going back and forth on several solutions to this. One is to add in a init container to wait on the Istio CNI, and it's one solution. And a second would be to, instead of modifying the primary CNI config, and then adding the Istio CNI plugin to that primary config, Istio could create its own config and copy the primary CNI config and add the Istio CNI plugin to that config. And then this config would have to have a higher priority than any existing primary CNI config. It's a bit complicated because if it would conflict with any CNIs that require that they have the highest priority. So it's not a perfect solution. You'd have to, we still need to dig into what CNIs this might conflict with. But I have a draft PR. It's rough, but I just wanted to get it out there for folks to take a look and get a little bit more familiar with this issue, since it's not really exploitable, but it is a security vulnerability. And as noted in some of the discussion, this is preventing some folks from adopting ambient because they're concerned about this vulnerability if their node restarts. But yeah, I would appreciate any feedback or just participation in that discussion on which solution we should move forward with. I think we still need to collect more information on the various CNIs and the conflicts that this could have, but it's messy, and this is a critical code path, and especially adding a different Istio owned config and then maintaining priority over other CNI configs is tricky. So
I don't have a solution, but I can tell you there is a clean solution. Unfortunately, not very easy to do for everyone. Keep in mind that Azure, GCP, and most vendors, and even people who install their own Kubernetes, they manage their own Kubernetes, there is control over the node. So the only clean solution is to make sure the node images, as they are used in Kubernetes, have Istio pre-bundled, pre-installed, and there is no Istio CNIs that needs to be installed to modify and to hack anything. Because even the concept of attaching to mounting the host directory and doing all kind of stuff, it's relatively dangerous. If it is built in, then there is no problem, and it's very clean and very simple. Now that's complicated because it requires people to have custom node images, but that's what it is.
Well, it also ties the life cycle of the zTunnel agent to the node life cycle, which
is good, because usually when you do this, you solve all the problems with upgrade and everything by having a single upgrade, and you don't have the risks around you upgrade zTunnel, you upgrade the node, kernel changes, NFT changes. You typically, because it's so critical, interaction between, the IP table, NFT, other CNI providers doing all kind of whatever IP table NFT they are doing, plus eBPF, plus other things. The only safe way, in my opinion, is to certify the node with a collection of CNIs or whatever combination it is, and not allow anyone to mess with it by blocking any kind of things like Istio or other things to mess up with IP tables, because then you have, again, it's interactions, and so it's not only the ordering. It's some eBPF program inserted by another CNI provider may have an unexpected, untested behavior. Anyway.
I mean, is that a feasible solution for most users? Is that an idealistic solution?
It is a feasible solution for vendors, or for users who manage their own Kubernetes clusters and they can modify the node image. It is not a feasible thing for someone who goes to some random vendor that doesn't support Istio natively and needs to install. But that's a problem anyway, because such vendors, if they are focused on security, they may just not allow CNI to be installed, and then we are kind of not in a good shape.
Well, thanks for raising this, Jackie. Was there anything else?
No, just please, feedback welcome. I'm not as familiar with our historical choices that we made and how we designed like our CNI reconciliation and other things. I think we also support not standalone, but not plugin. Not chaining. But I'm not really sure when that would ever work. So there's things I don't quite understand and choices I don't know. I'm not sure why we need. So if anyone has that historical context, that would be great. I'm still ramping up my CNI knowledge.
All right. Well, I'll try to take a look a little later today.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. That's the agenda and that's the hour, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.